Back in July of 2025, a friend and I hopped on a plane to Tokyo, Japan, where we spent a few weeks enjoying the sights, eating delicious food, and embarrassing ourselves with our very limited Japanese. Somehow, someway, we not only survived, but thrived, and had a wonderful time while doing so. A time that I've been wanting to share with y'all for quite a while, but I am not a very good vlogger. I am so bad, in fact, that I somehow managed to take a 10-minute video of my shirt. So I've been struggling to figure out how to edit this in a meaningful way for all of you to enjoy. Therefore, since it has been so long since my visit, and I do not have comprehensive footage of all of the locations that we went to, I'm just going to provide some highlights from the trip for your entertainment today. Because of this, before we begin, I must make the mandatory statement that this video is not sponsored in any way by anyone. All opinions expressed in this video are solely my own, based on my own experience, without any influence by third parties. With that out of the way, we're here now in Tokyo, where we are greeted by Hatsune Miku at Haneda Airport. Now, logistics and lodging is probably the most boring part of any vacation. However, it is also a very important part. Since we flew into Haneda Airport, the airport monorail was a mode of transportation that we could consider. And Hamamatsucho Station is not only on the monorail line, but it is also on the Yamanote and Keihin Tohoku JR lines. And our hotel had direct access to the Yurikamome underground line. This made it an extremely convenient base of operations that could get us anywhere and everywhere we wanted to go. And our hotel, despite being a business style, is geared towards global travelers, so the rooms take that into consideration and have plenty of storage for all of your luggage, souvenirs, clothes, what have you. This was the room that I stayed in, with its very fancy bed and under-bed storage, where you can see my clamshell suitcases. There's definitely enough floor space to open them up. However, if you have two people in a room, it might be close quarters, so you're gonna have to just be aware of that and take turns organizing your souvenirs. There are also hangers for all of your clothes, a TV, an aircon, a door with emergency procedures, a full-length mirror that I did not discover until week 2 of our stay, and of course your bathroom with towels, toilet, vanity, and shower. The room comes in a double or twin option. However, the rooms themselves will stay the same regardless of what you choose. The only difference is that the bed will have a piece of like Velcro tape in between the two twins if you book the double room, or it will not be there if you book the twin room, and then you'll have separate sheets. There are other branches of this same hotel chain in other locations like Asakusa, but again, since we came into Haneda, this was just such a convenient in and out point for not only the airport, but for the other places we went to as well. Our first full day was spent wandering around Shibuya and Shinjuku, since we were both severely jet lagged and we were up at 5 a.m. Naturally, this also meant we were able to get our Hachiko picks in without any line, and we were able to see the glorious nothing that is Shibuya Scramble. This is quite literally it. This is the crossing. It is so much smaller in person. I really do not understand the hype surrounding this location. Granted, we were there so early none of the billboards were on, but even still, it is certainly not worth getting crushed in a crowd of people during normal hours just to see this specific patch of pavement. What is impressive in Shibuya is the massive amount of shopping you can do, but stores typically don't open until 10 a.m. But for us, it was like 7 a.m. So after a lovely breakfast at one of my all-time favorite chains, Komeda's Coffee, I cannot hype this enough. You get free toast with your coffee purchase in the morning. It's great, guys. I got this tiny little clam guy out of a claw machine, and you know where I put him immediately? Komeda's Coffee. He lives there now. I love this brand. Anyway, after we had our lovely breakfast, we wandered over to Neji Jingu. According to the shrine's official site, it was established in 1920 to commemorate the virtues of Emperor Meiji and Empress Shoken, who were instrumental in the modernization of Japan. Both the Emperor and Empress's souls are enshrined here, with the shrine itself sitting in a 70-hectare man-made forest. Along the way to the main shrine, you'll be surrounded by this lush forest, pass through several massive torii gates, and see some artfully decorated sake barrels which have been donated as offerings to the shrine. We got there super early, however, we also did not have to compete with crowds. This made the overall experience so much better, as the atmosphere was just peaceful, serene, sacred. It was wonderful. A beautiful way to start the beginning of the day. And very close by, you can find the Meiji Jingu Inner Garden. For a small fee, you can enter this curated garden, and depending on the time of year, you might just be able to see something special, like this river of irises in June, the red maple leaves in fall, or even blooming azaleas in spring. The garden itself used to be part of a suburban residence during the Edo period, but later came under the supervision of the imperial household, eventually being renamed Yoyogi Ryoen. We visited a bit too late to see the full river of irises, but there were still a few flowering plants, and the blooms were gorgeous. I can only imagine how impressive it is when they're all blossoming together. There were a few bonsai trees on display as well, which lined one of the pathways down to the south lake. There's a few benches and even a gazebo in the park, and with the cost being around $3 at least currently, I think it's well worth it, particularly if you're in town during one of the aforementioned seasons. It's also a great place to kill some time before things open up if you happen to be like my friend and I and are up just way too early on your first day. After our nature soak, we made our way over to the Shibuya Pokémon Center, and for simplicity's sake, I'm going to loop all of the Pokémon Centers we visited into this section, since once you've seen one, you've basically seen them all. And unless you're a diehard Pokemon fan, the differences are kind of negligible. This specific location is home to Mewtwo and is more sci-fi themed. The selection of goods is a bit smaller compared to some of the other locations we visited, but it is where I found the first love of my life, Larry. They even had stickers of him. Stickers! I was sold immediately. Larry was acquired post-haste along with the stickers, whilst my friend picked up an Altaria plush. Some of the other Pokemon Centers we visited throughout our travels were Ikebukuro Sunshine City, one that's much more cottagecore, the Yokohama one with Kyogre and Phanpy, the Tokyo Station one, which is travel-themed naturally and also houses Character Street, where I met my second husband, one of the riders from Bride's Common, a game that is now defunct, but this man had me in a chokehold, so much so that I bought a scarf of him that I didn't realize was almost the size of my door, and now I'm too embarrassed to put it up anywhere because it's massive. But he was going to be my second husband after Larry. Very unfortunate that he no longer exists. Anyways, there's also a Pokemon Center in the Skytree that has Rayquaza, the Mega Tokyo store has Miraidon, and there's also a Pokemon Go Lab in Ikebukuro Sunshine City. My favorite locations were the Shibuya, Ikebukuro, and Tokyo DX centers, since Shibuya and Ikebukuro had aesthetics that I really liked, and the Tokyo DX Center had the most amount of merch. They even had these exclusive Curry Pikachu plushies, which are just adorable. I did forget to pick up the special Kabuki Pikachu that's exclusive to that location. I do not remember if I even saw it there, to be honest. However, that might have been because of all the distracting wall wraps full of all these fun Pokemon, as well as the Pokémon Cafe. We did not go to Pokémon Cafe on day one, but since we're already here, let's talk about it. This is one of those bucket list experiences that I was really looking forward to, and the cafe's theming is on point. It is just so cute. There are so many Pokemon everywhere, and I even got Larry to dress up for the occasion. Getting reservations was a nightmare. However, we were fortunate to get seating in the Lapras section. According to my research, the Lapras and Pikachu sections at the Tokyo location give the best view of the Dancing Pikachu show, which was in fact correct. And the Lapras section specifically is where the Pokemon starter statues are. If you get lucky, you can stare at your favorite from the current generation while you eat. And boy oh boy, were the gods on my side that day. There, in all of his glory, was Fuecoco, pleased at my monetary sacrifice shaped in his form. I got the Eevee milk tea float to match my Eevee earrings. It was delicious. For the main, I got the Pikachu curry plate with friend Charmander, which was mid. And for dessert, I got the limited time Mega Ampharos something. It was pretty tasty, jiggly, and gorgeous, but I cannot tell you for the life of me what it was. Regardless, I enjoyed it. And of course, the star of the show, waitress Pikachu, came out to greet us and did a little dance. While you bask in all of her glory, I'm going to level with you. I'm glad that I did this, but it is not something I would do again. Not because my luck peaked with Fuecoco, or because I will never see this amazing dessert again, but because it was expensive and it felt really rushed. I was not expecting to sit for hours, given the nature of this cafe. I knew there was high turnover, but everything happened so quickly, and the staff were so ridiculously stressed, you could just feel it in the air. I think the combination of these factors made the hour we have feel even shorter. The food is also extremely expensive for what you're getting, which is the same at most themed cafes. You are paying for the aesthetic more than you are the flavor and the chance to do the little gotchas. But $20 for a subpar curry when you can go to a chain and get this delicious cutlet curry for less just to have the novelty of eating Pikachu's face really hurt my inner Ruggy. I think my total bill was something like 6,200 yen or roughly $40 USD, and I know I didn't have to get the dessert, but by the time I was making my food selection in like the first 5 minutes, I already kind of knew that this was going to be a one and done novelty. So I went bigger than I reasonably should have, and I don't regret getting the dessert, but the whole experience really was just that, a one and done novelty. It was cute, it was fun, but it is not worth a revisit. Going back to the Shibuya Pokemon Center, it is also right across from a Nintendo store, and this location had so much cool merch, especially for Animal Crossing. I did not buy anything here, but I was mega tempted, same as I was in the jump shop that was also conveniently next door. They had this cute little cat Gojo as well that I almost bought, even though I don't like Gojo just because he was a cat. But man, none of the things that I saw there could have ever prepared me for what I was going to find next. I found them. And I bet you that one singular capsule is gonna be Trey. Riddle! Oh my god, it's Riddle. A day one Riddle acquisition felt like a good omen, so we headed up to Ikebukuro to continue the merch hunt. I do not have any pictures of Ikebukuro except for the Pokémon Center, but it was a very fruitful venture as I found quite a bit of Octavinelle merch at the Mandarake branch there. I'm gonna go over all of my tips and tricks for Twist merch in a dedicated section towards the end, but for now, just know that you do not want to sleep on Ikebukuro. We also decided to spend a day in Yanaka, focusing our morning on Cat Town. There are so many cute cat-themed things here. The street itself is flooded with cats and cat-shaped things and cat snacks and cat everything. But it is kind of small. So as we were heading back from our outing, we saw this older fellow holding up a sign in the station that said free tours, and after confirming that the tours were in fact free, we decided, what the heck, we'll walk around town again, but this time with insight. This was the best decision we made that day. And since we were the only ones willing to walk around in the heat, we basically got a private tour. If you ever happen to be in the area, join one of these SGG club tours. They were fantastic. Our guide was so knowledgeable and also so sweet. He even lent me his umbrella to keep the sun off me because it was July and ungodly hot. He took us to the grave of a shogun, a few temples and shrines, and then the Asakusa Sculptural Museum. They had very, very few designated photo zones in this particular museum, but if you are at all interested in architecture or sculpture, this place is a fantastic stop. Asakura is a very famous Japanese sculptor, and the museum is set in his very own house that he lived and worked out of, a house that he built with artistry and intentionality. There are still some details of the design to this day that keep me up at night with wonder and amazement. It was fantastic. Afterwards, our guide took us to a local senbei shop and then ended the tour back in Cat Town. Since we had spent additional time with the walking tour, we saved Ueno and some other things that we were going to do for another day, and instead went to Akihabara since it was on the way back to our hotel. I took precisely one singular photo of this location, this photo that is on screen, and then I was hunting for merch. Akihabara is considered to be an anime mecca and has a lot of stores dedicated to figures, books, and other merchandise. However, because of this, it also tends to be a bit more expensive, with one shop reselling the Sleeping Malleus figure for a 300% markup, but also the Sebek figure for 40% discount. So, you really gotta shop around. I was so focused on finding Twist figures that I did not take photos of anything else when I was there, except for this. When we were in Japan, this series of the sitting figures released, and for days I could not find them anywhere, and then as a last-ditch effort, we came back to Akihabara, and there was not one, not two, but 5 separate machines with these little guys. I do not know what sort of spirit possessed me or the machines, but I ended up getting 3 Malleuses in a row. My friend went to try and then got a Lilia, so that kind of balanced it out. And of course, over the course of the remaining few days of our trip, I pulled a lot more, and I have a complete set now. Another stop on our travels was Asakusa, home of Sensoji Temple, the oldest established Buddhist temple in Tokyo, as well as Nakamisedori, and a host of other fun spots like Tanukidori. We stopped by the temple first and got our omikuji. Mine was apparently the best luck, so I was quite happy about that. This turned out to be an accurate omen too, as the food spots that we went and checked out nearby were everything that I had heard they were and more. Giraffa sells exceptionally delicious curry pan, and it did not disappoint. Next was Mochinyanyaki, which sells these adorable little cat-shaped baby castellas. They've got a bunch of different fillings to pick from too, including a seasonal flavor, so I highly recommend visiting if you ever get the chance. With very full bellies, we headed over to Tanukidori to collect even more good fortune. Here you can rub the bellies of various Tanuki statues scattered along the street for various benefits. There are ones for education, business, family, beauty, etc., but we very indiscriminately rubbed the bellies. I think we hit all of them. You can't have too many blessings, right? We were also in the area during the Tanabata festivities, so we decided to check that out too. Tanabata, or Hoshimatsuri, originates from a Chinese festival and celebrates the yearly meeting of the deities Orihime, represented by the star Vega, and Hikoboshi, represented by the star Altier. The two lovers are separated by the Milky Way, but on the 7th day of the 7th lunar month, the two are allowed to meet. We were unfortunately much too early to participate in any of the actual festival activities, but we did get a free fan, and there were some delicious street food vendors already set up. Plus, while you're walking along, you get a wonderful view of the Sky Tree too. We also popped into Skytree Town for some shopping and stumbled into a Digital Circus pop-up store, which was kind of wild. I was not expecting Digital Circus to be as popular as it is in Japan, but the merch in this particular location was flying like hotcakes, and some of the exclusives were already sold out. I did not pick up anything, but it was really neat to see. We unfortunately did not get tickets to the Ghibli Museum, but we did get tickets to the Ghibli Warehouse Exhibition, a limited time event that was running in Tokyo while we were there. In this warehouse exhibition, you are able to see huge replicas of famous scenes from the movies, as well as learn about the history behind Ghibli, how international releases worked, what the history was with those distributions. There was even movie posters from all around the world. It was just such a fantastic place to visit. I cannot impress upon you just how wonderful this exhibition was. You are walking through all of these scenes from all of your favorite movies, or perhaps movies that you haven't watched, but they are done with such excellent attention to detail. They are lifelike, they are huge, it feels like you are literally walking into a Ghibli film, because you technically are. Particularly in some places like Howl's Kitchen, where Calcifer's just there, waiting for you, having a grand old time. There is I forget exactly what the scale was for the Pocoroso plane, but that was there. It's an actual plane that you can go and look at with actual Pocoroso standing right there. There were smaller models and other little moments throughout, but you could see Kiki at regular human size in her bakery. It was just so fun. And then of course they had photo spots, which you could not just take a blank template of, so I cannot show you them. But it was fantastic. The overall experience was so good, and I spent way too much money in the merch store at the end. I misread the label for one of the things that I bought as 2,000 yen when it was 6,000 yen. So when my total ended up being 100,000 yen, I was like, that's not right, but I don't know how to do math, so sure. If this event ever happens again and you happen to be in the area or you happen to be traveling to Japan at the time, then please, 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 please make sure that you go and see it. Of course, if the exhibition isn't running, the museum is still a fantastic option. They have short little movies that you can only see at that museum, as well as a rotating exhibition and, of course, the standard procedures. The one thing that is Ghibli themed that people will tell you about, or at least gives you the air of Ghibli, that I found particularly to be not worth it is Kichijoji Petit Mura. When they say petite, they mean petite. We were just two people, and two other people came in, and we had to be like dancing around the foliage and trying to squeeze past each. It's not a vibe. The restaurant there we did eat at, it was fantastic. I do recommend if you happen to be in the area and you want to eat there versus somewhere else. They had a really, really good sandwich and really good tea. It was very atmospheric. So I do understand that part of it, but the actual location of Petit Mura, if you're not going there to eat or you're not going there to visit those specific shops, it's not worth going to. There are better Ghibli spots all around Japan that you can go to and get vibes for. This is not a place that I will go back to. It is a place that I would skip. I think your time could be spent better elsewhere. Another place that you might want to skip is the Art Aquarium in Ginza. This is a space that combines goldfish husbandry with artistic expression, and they do so in a way that is very dazzling. All of the spaces and the way that this exhibition is constructed is extremely Instagrammable. While you are going through it, it is like you are transported to another world. And I, for one, had no idea that so many different types of goldfish existed. Like, there were goldfish here that I had never even seen before. And so in that way, I think that this was a very educational experience for me. And it was one that, while I was going through it, was very calming in the majority of the spaces. But animal welfare in the East is extremely different than what it is in the West. And this is not a conversation that I am educated enough in to have in a manner that is constructive. But what I can say is that a lot of the goldfish were in containers that were a little bit too small. They did have good filtration throughout the entire exhibition, so I don't think that they were suffocating in any of the instances. But there's not a lot of enrichment, there's not a lot of space, and you could tell that some of the goldfish were very frustrated with the environment that they were in. So it did make me a little sad in that regard. And if you are a person where that is very important to you and you are planning a trip to Japan and you see the reels about this place and all the people on Instagram talking about how cool it is, this may be good information for you to know up front so you can schedule it out of your trip. Just in case. Not that I think that I am important enough for any of this information to really be that impactful, but, you know, just as a little FYI. We also took some day trips out of the city to other towns like Kawagoe or Little Edo. Here you can see fabulous traditional architecture, visit traditional sweet shops, eat delicious sweet potatoes, which is a specialty of the town, and visit a few different shrines that hold their own novelties. Our first stop was Kawagoe Hikawa Shrine, where you can fish up your fortune. There are red for general fortune or pink and blue for love, and there was also some sweet potatoes that you could get as well, which were very fun, but they were more expensive. So I went for one of the blue fish. The actual fishing is very hard, especially if you're trying to record yourself doing it, and the one I eventually got was a bit stuck, so it took some effort to finally free it from the pile. You get to keep the fish and fortune both, although my fortune was not very promising. Since we were visiting in the summer, they also had wind bells hung up in various spots that were so pretty. Walking under them and hearing them chime was fantastic. However, this was the only place we went to that I actually got mosquito bites, so be prepared for those buggers if you decide to visit. We also went to the Kawagoe Kumano Shrine to see these delightful three-footed crows. You can also pick a little one up for yourself and write a wish for them to keep. Once the wish is granted, you are supposed to return the little guy back to the shrine. However, the English note included in my purchase says that if you live far away, you can just keep the crow as a memento of your travels. Another day trip we took was to Kamakura, home of bamboo forests, a lovely bay, and a very big Buddha. This was by far my favorite day trip of the whole expedition. Since we were there relatively early, we got to start our morning at Hokokuji, a Buddhist temple with its very own bamboo forest. According to its official site, the temple was established by Tengan Eko in 1334 to commemorate the first of the Ashikaga shoguns, Ashikaga Ietoki. Along with the bamboo forest, there is a very impressive moss garden at the entrance, a dry landscape garden inside the grounds, artificial caves that serve as a burial ground, a main hall, a medium hall, a bell tower, and even a small pond with koi. There's also a little cafe on site, so for an additional fee, you can sip matcha, enjoy some traditional sweets, and gaze at the bamboo. The forest itself was a bit smaller than I was expecting. However, much like our initial visit to Meiji Jingu and its gardens, spending the morning surrounded by nature and tranquility was just such a wonderful experience. On our walk back towards the station, we stopped at Tsurugaoka Hachimangu, a massive Shinto shrine that has beautiful ponds teeming with wildlife, tons of adorable pigeons, art galleries, museums, and because we were visiting around Tanabata, the shrine was decorated beautifully. This site is one of major historical significance for Kamakura, so if you're interested in that sort of thing, it's definitely worth stopping by. We also visited Kotoku-in, another Buddhist temple, which houses the Kamakura Daibutsu, or the Great Buddha of Kamakura. The size and scale of the copper image is certainly impressive, and the temple grounds are also lovely to walk around. For an additional fee, you can even go inside the Buddha and learn more about its construction, which was neat. However, I do not recommend doing so in the middle of July like I did, because copper is metal, and metal heats up, and I was feeling a little lightheaded when I came out. And they do warn you before you go in not to spend too much time in there, lest they have to come rescue you, so... Naturally, as well, a trip to a seaside town would not be complete without a seaside stroll, and I got to touch the Pacific Ocean for the very first time. I greatly enjoyed my time here, however, because the town is so charming, so does everyone else and their mothers. Komachi Street is a touristy shopping street with various restaurants and shops, and once the afternoon hit, this spot was extremely crowded. But I will say, the street food was fantastic. I got to eat a whole seared squid and the best octopus fish cake I have ever had. I do not have any pictures because my hands were full of squid and fish cake, but trust me, it was worth it. We also did a half day in Setagaya City, going to both Gotokuji Temple and Shoin Jinja. The walk to Gotokuji Temple was very quaint, as you wander through residential areas in order to get to the actual temple grounds. Once you are there, you can bask in the glory of hundreds of thousands of lucky cats as well as beautiful architecture and gardens. There were also a lot of tourists here, and the vending machines on the location refused to accept my credit card, so I had to go into the temple to get my little cat, but acquire it I did. A little tired of the crowds and wanting to see more wind bells, we made our way to Shoin Jinja. There were no tourists at this location at all, but there was, as advertised, a beautiful display of wind bells. Just listen to them chime. I could have easily spent an hour here just sitting and listening to them. It was so wonderful, but alas, we had other things to do, like eat ramen. If you're only visiting Tokyo but still want to sample ramen from other parts of Japan, may I suggest visiting the Shin Yokohama Ramen Museum. You can learn all about how ramen came to be in Japan, how it evolved over time, and even take a ramen making class for an additional fee. They have this very cool display with all of the different regional specialties overlaid on this map of Japan, which I thought was really cool. And while we were visiting, they were hosting a collab with these fellows. Neither one of us knew who they were, so we dubbed them the Ramens, and they were all over the place, even in the 1958 street replicas on the lower floor. Oh yeah, that's the best part of this museum, aside from the food, of course. You can literally step back in time and walk through 1958 Japan, the same year that instant ramen was invented. On the same floor as the replica, you can also visit several different ramen shops to sample varieties from all over Japan. Azul, of course, came prepared to sample each and every dish, solely for research purposes, of course, and we were not disappointed. My friend and I got the smallest portion size at each location, as they allow you to have a sample size versus a regular bowl if you would like to sample more than one type of ramen. And even still, we couldn't eat more than 3. However, my favorite was the Onna Aji ramen served at Ryukyu Shinmen Tondo. The salt base was flavorful, the chashu was decent, and the greens that topped the dish were extremely refreshing. We also visited Yokohama proper twice. This port city is quite laid back and offers a wide variety of activities. For us, visiting the Red Brick Warehouse, walking through and eating fantastic food in Chinatown, as well as strolling by the seaside were certainly highlights. I also ate the best donut I have ever had in my life here as well. At the time, I didn't realize that this was a chain, but I would go back 10,000 times to have this matcha donut again. The cream was tart, but the pastry was sweet. It was just the perfect combination. Beauté, full marks. There are a few museums, art galleries, and naturally plenty of shopping, but even just walking around the port was enough to keep us entertained. We did stop by Cosmo World, a teeny tiny but somehow very expensive amusement park on the same island as the Red Brick Warehouse. My friend decided to cough up some coins to thrash some crocodiles, as well as try to save another Pikachu, which went about how you would expect. I somehow managed to win these buff mice in a crane game there as well. I know nothing about Demon Slayer, but when I saw these little guys, I knew I had to have them, and now they hold up my pens at work. I got some of my coolest Twist merchandise in Yokohama as well, including this 40-ish USD mystery box that I picked up because it said Octavinelle on it. Google Translate said it was some kind of watch, so I thought it was one of those pocket watches, but it was so much better. I also found all of the Nendroids I purchased here as well, and these Acelings. Now, we did go to a few more places and do a few more things. However, I feel like the majority of you lovely viewers are probably the most interested in the Twisted Wonderland merchandise. And I heavily debated whether or not to include merch shopping tips and tricks in this video versus the merch haul video. But considering that the merch haul is probably going to take like another 6 months, we're just going to do this here. Now, there are a few important things to note if you are looking for merch in Japan. The first of which is your budget. I am very much a ruggie. I like to save as much coin as I can, so pretty much everything that I bought outside of the art books was secondhand, and even those art books I'm sure you could find secondhand in a book off if you really wanted to save $1. So a lot of my recommendations are going to be coming from that perspective. Secondly, there's a couple different classifications that merch can fall into. You have new merch, which is sold at stores like Animate, which is brandy new. You are just buying it right then and there. The only other person that has ever owned it is you and the company that made it. This merch, when you are there, is going to be the things that are newly released. Every Animate that I went to and every location that sold new merch had barely any Twist merch for one. And secondly, only had stuff from current campaigns. Like, I think the Animate in Ikebukuro, when I went, only had like Culinary Crucible pins for some reason, because that was the current event series that was running. So if there is something current that you want, those stores are going to be good. And if you are looking for art books and you want those new, Animates and places like that are going to be good for you as well. The second classification is going to be second-hand merch. This is merch that has been owned by someone else, has been sold to a store, and now they are reselling it to anybody that would want that merch. This is where I found all of my Nendroids. This is where I found certain acrylic standees. There's like thousands of buttons if you're making an eat-a-bag at these sorts of places. These are a hot spot for you to go to if you are looking to pick up older releases on a budget. These secondhand stores will also sometimes have a trash section. This is not what you typically think of in the West as trash. This is just a section of merch that is at really, really cheap prices because the staff have not been able to authenticate it or verify the quality of that merch. All trash merch is final sale, which typically isn't a problem for us tourists who are not going to be living in Japan to be able to return the items anyway. But this is where you can sometimes pick up buttons, cards, nuis for like 100 yen or 200 yen. I found an Azul plushie in a trash bin for like less than $5. I think he was 500 yen. You can get really, really good deals in the trash section. Do not sleep on the trash. Guys, don't sleep on the trash. That's Silverno's job. You're gonna go get some sweet, sweet Twist merch out of those bins. The third thing is that certain locations that sell secondhand merch may not have anime merch. Specifically, this is the case with book-offs. Book-offs are a chain that sell books and CDs. That is their main bread and butter, but they also dip their toes into pretty much everything else under the sun. Anime merch, vintage clothing, regular clothing, household goods. Like you can find anything in a book-off if you go to the right locations. So before you go anywhere, just double check that the location that you're going to sells anime merch if that is what you were looking for specifically. Don't be like me and walk 30 minutes to a book-off that only has books and CDs. It's not fun in the middle of July. And the last thing to note ahead of time is that if the farther you can get away from the major city, the more reasonable the pricing of the merch will be. However, the variety is going to heavily vary depending on location. In terms of specific locations, Ikebukuro is going to be your one-stop shop for all things anime. This has become the anime hotspot as far as I am aware and as far as my experience was. There are a bunch of different shops here that do sell Twisted Wonderland merch. It does seem to be skewed a little bit towards more of the otome side in Ikebukuro, at least from the locations that I visited. It is more up and coming for general anime merch as well. There is an anime location here that I did get some of my Twist art books from, and a mandarake that I got some of my initial Octavinelle merch. There is also a K-Books literally next door. There are also 3 Lashimon locations that all, to my knowledge, have Twist merch here as well. One of them has a 100 yen wall, which also includes Twist merch, so you may be able to get some Nui plushies there, as well as pins and cards and some other stuff for that cheap price. I don't remember if it was open when I went. I think it's a newer location because I don't remember seeing that wall. Otherwise, I probably would have gone feral like I did in all of the other trash sections. But there is also the Yaoi dungeon, which I don't remember if I went into or not. If I did go into it, I don't remember it because I couldn't find Twist merch or I wasn't looking hard enough in that particular location. However, if you are into otome, it is also going to be a location that you want to check out. It is right next to the mandarake. Venture in. I promise you it is probably not going to be nearly as scary as the title of Yaoi Dungeon makes it out to be. And there is also a Setagaya location here too. I don't remember about the selection of merch, but I do think that they have Twist merch. All the Setagaya locations that I went to have their merchandise very well segmented, even the junk bins. So if they don't have Twist merch, you'll find out very quickly. One of the other locations that you'll also want to stop in just for the experience, if not for the Twist merch, is going to be a Nakano Broadway, with a slight asterisk for Kichijoji because it's kind of over on that side of the map. But Nakano Broadway has become very popular these days on social media for its anime merch specifically, and there are several name brand stores within it. However, the shopping mall is a legitimate shopping mall that has a bunch of other stuff in it. There are regular, pharmacies, clothing stores. I think there might even be a Daiso. There's just a lot of stuff in here. It's not all anime, and it is set up very much like a flea market. So even though there is a mandarake in Nakano Broadway, the mandarake is broken up into various different stores that are kind of scattered around the mall. So depending on the kind of merch that you are looking for will then dictate which of the mandarake branches you go into. There was one that just had Kamen Rider stuff. There was one that just had model train stuff. So you're gonna have to dig around here and look through things. But in terms of mandarake, the only one that I found Twist merch in was the Disney annex that they had, which kind of makes sense since it is a Disney IP. However, there is also a Lashingbang location here where I did get a lot more merch, including my really big Floyd and Jade plushies. Jade was super on sale. Both of them technically were on sale. Floyd really wasn't on sale, but Jade, he was like 4,000 yen for this 40 centimeter plushie. The cashier checked the price 3 times and was like shocked. I was shocked. We were all shocked, and Jade was just there, smiling, as always, living for the chaos. There are also a bunch of independent stores in here as well, again, very flea market-esque. So there are different places you can go to that aren't name brand that will have Twist merch. I saw a Leona sitting in the chair figure. I don't know if that's what they're called. The Ichiban Kuji prizes where they're sitting in the chairs. There was a Leona figure in here somewhere. Was not a name brand store, but he existed. There are some other, assorted places that have Twist merch. You just gotta take a half day and explore. The asterisk is for Kichijoji because Ghibli Museum is in Kichijoji as well as a couple other things. And in Kichijoji, there is a book off. That is where I found my Crowley bean. That is where I found a couple other little things. And where I did my very first and only Ichiban Kujis. And I gave the cashier a little heart attack by asking for it. So that was great as well. But we got through it. We did 2. I got the prizes. We figured it out. It was great. I was not that far from the station to this specific book off location as well. So if you, again, happen to be in the area, it is a location that you can find Twist merch in. So I figured it was worth noting here. Akihabara, of course, is the anime mecca on paper, and there is a lot of content here for all of the really popular series. I found the most success for Twist specifically with the Lashingbang location, the Akihabara news store. All of the Twist merch was on the first floor. However, this shop is located in a building with several other stores on the upper levels, including a store where I found those Diasomnia sitting figures being resold. There is a K-Books in Akihabara as well that had Twist merch, but it was very pricey. And there is a Setagaya location there as well. But again, I cannot remember if Setagaya had merch. The only Setagaya that I remember having merch in was the one in Yokohama. The Yokohama is where I got a lot of my higher tier Twist merch. It is where I found my Riddle figure. It is where I found all of my Nendroids. It had a lot of heavy hitters. So, if you are going to Yokohama, I recommend going to the Lashingbang and Setagaya that are in the Marui City Yokohama shopping mall. This is also the location of the Pokémon Center, so if you are going to that Pokémon Center, you're also going to stumble upon the secondhand locations. And if you're lucky, you may also find a bunch of Sebek beans or my heavily discounted Octavinelle plushies. There is also a separate Lashingbang that is, I think, near the station, possibly over there. That location when I went had all of its Twist merch, or at least all the buttons and pins and keychains and stuff discounted to like 100 yen. It was fantastic. I had such a good time. I spent way too much money. I found a Floyd laying down plushie as soon as I was leaving, but I already spent like 80 USD, and I was very embarrassed to go back to the cashier, the singular person working there on this lovely little like Tuesday afternoon, to be like, one more, please. So I did not purchase the Floyd, but they did have Twist merch there. Those are all the spots that I checked out that I remember finding Twist merch in. My merch haul, again, will be somewhere in the future, eventually happening, I guess, at some point in time. I still want to make that video, but there's like moving parts to it that I just can't figure out for the life of me. So eventually that'll happen. But on the whole, this trip was fantastic, and I am so grateful that I had the privilege to go for as long as I did and to see all of the things that I got to see. We really covered a lot of ground in our travels, and it was just so good. I cannot wait. I want to go back so bad. Please let me back. I want to go. Thank you for letting me ramble about my adventures and ramble on about all of the various experiences that I had. Let me know if you enjoyed, and what would you like to do if you had the chance to go to Japan? Are you going to Japan anytime soon? Are there things in this video that you would also like to do? Are there other things that you are going to do or have done that were great experiences? Let me know all of that down below. And if comments aren't your thing, you could always like and subscribe instead. Now, before you go, I just have to remind you that you're amazing, and I hope you have a wonderful day.